So a few months back now, I guess, I did a challenge, a 75 hard challenge it was called. And it was 75 days of doing like certain things routinely, like exercising twice a day, drinking a gallon of water, reading a book. You get the idea. And there was kind of a checklist, and each day you had to make sure you checked off everything on the checklist. Not a crazy idea, but enjoyed it, enjoyed the challenge. And I started to recognize some benefits from it, aside from the obvious of working out and reading, etc. But I'm just kind of like that regimen to it, right? That structure to it of like, okay, I have my checklist. I kind of know what I have to do each day. And when it wrapped up, one of my realizations, which I talked about in the video, was I like that tool. I think I'll apply that more specifically to me though. Like I'll pick the things I really want to do, and try and implement that same rigor and that same structure and that same regimen to it. So I've been doing that now for about almost 2 months, picking things I like to do, one of which is these videos, writing, reading, going for a walk, things like this, right? So same thing. So I got a checklist of about 10 things each day that I do. And what I found, kind of as I've been observing it over the last week or two, just trying to think about it, is it's interesting because probably no surprise, but just interesting to think about why it's effective. What I find myself doing often is, obviously I have the personality in which I want to check things off the checklist, and that's one of the obvious benefits, right? You create a checklist. For many people that's psychological. I want to check that off, so you feel more compelled or motivated to do that, and I definitely feel that. But kind of taking that a little bit further, what I find is that when I have free time in the day, right, with my son's kind of doing his schoolwork or whatever, and I'm kind of have a lull in work or whatever it might be, I look to that checklist and I say, okay, I have 20 minutes. What can I do? Can I listen to a podcast? Can I read my book? Can I do one of the other things on my list, in the spirit of checking that thing off? And, that's what I'll end up doing often. So I started thinking about that concept more broadly, and I'll marry it to another concept in one of the books that I'm reading. I'm reading Clayton Christensen's book, How to Live a Meaningful Life, I believe it's called. And one of the concepts he talks about from a business perspective is deliberate and emergent strategies. And this idea that when businesses create strategies, often what they do is focus more on the deliberate. They set out, in advance, this is our strategy, this is our 3-year plan, this is what we're going to do, and that's what they go after. But you have to be cognizant of emergent strategies and opportunities that might present themselves that you didn't expect. And when those are there and they're worth pursuing, you should go after them. And he talks a lot about how you identify the right balance in that. But it made me think about my personal life and my personal time. And, there's deliberate and there's emergent in that as well. And what I think I'm learning from this checklist framework and this exercise that I'm doing, that I've put in place, is that I fell victim too much to quote unquote emergent strategies or emergent ways of spending my time. Previously, right, pre-checklist, if I had extra time, it was roll the dice. It could be any number of things I did. It might be things that I just, first thing that came to mind, like, oh, I guess I'll watch some TV, or I'll just go stare at my phone for a little bit, or I'll go, call somebody and make a phone call. Sometimes it might have been, as I talk about often in these videos, I wasn't even conscious of it, right? Subconscious to me. Maybe I was primed by something in some way, or something happened and I, would just go get some food because I smelled food somewhere, right? It could be any number of things, but I wasn't really in control of it, ironically. I was kind of just, it was emergent. It was just, it could be anything that I spent my time on. And I think for a lot of people that probably resonates, because it's easy to, go through your day and not think too much about that. And you feel like you're relatively in control. But when you look back over a week or a month and you start to say, hey, where am I really spending my time? And there's a quote, I think my sister-in-law said it actually, but it's something along the lines of, show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities, because where you spend your time, that's obviously what's important to you. And I think that's true. I think had I looked at my calendar over, a week or a month, 6 months ago, it would have been all over the place. And I would have been disappointed, to say the least, at where I was spending so many chunks of my time, because it's inefficient. It's not what I want to be focused on. It's not the things that bring me the most pleasure. It's not the things that work towards objectives or goals that I have. So ironically, when you put in this kind of regimented structure and it becomes more rigid and you have your checklist every day, for many people that feels monotonous. It feels grinding. It feels too structured and too disciplined, and I need to be more free than that. But it's kind of the opposite, counterintuitively. It's kind of, you are being freer. You're being more deliberate in some ways, right? Back to deliberate strategy of saying, hey, I've thought about it. Here's where I want to spend my time. I like reading. I like writing. I like making videos, right? I like going for a walk. I want those things. But life gets in the way, our subconscious gets in the way, everything gets in the way, and we lose control. And we end up spending our times more based on something else, some sort of outside factor that dictates how we spend our time, or something that's not conscious to us. So bringing in this structure actually frees us more, and it allows us to make sure we're spending our time on the things we want to spend it on. And as I was thinking about this, you start to look it up and see it, and it's others have said this as well. There's a lot of military folks. Jocko, for those that listen or like him, I think spoke on this about how discipline is so liberating. And I think this is what they're getting at. You are being much more deliberate about the things you want to spend your time on. And by putting this structure in place, it allows you to ensure that when you have that free time, you know where you're going to spend it. You're not going to kind of drift off and get out of your lane there and go somewhere else. And that's been hugely beneficial to me.